We're going to go ahead and get started. We're very excited today to have Rosemary Castile and Gretchen McMasters here with us. Rosemary is the Continuous Improvement Manager. It's a new position that was formed at WVU OHRP. She started with us in August of 2019. She does have a bachelor's in computer science. She's also a certified information security auditor as well. Some of her experience is with IT security audit and compliance. She's done that for the last 15 years. And then also with IT NASD/NASDAQ for 13 years as well. She was a VP operations project manager there as well. And Gretchen is the director for the WVU Office of Human Research Protections, which she joined in May of 2018. Her career in research compliance began 14 years ago at Northern Arizona. So she moved from really nice warm weather to here to West Virginia, where she focused on IRB operations, evidence-based practice, hospital efficiency, and process improvement. She received her MBA from the University of Southern California and holds numerous certifications in IRB operations and research compliance, including Certified IRB Manager, Certified IRB Professional, and Certified in Healthcare Research Compliance. She also holds a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt in Process Improvement. So ladies, thank you so much for presenting today and joining us. Like I mentioned once before, they're going to present some slides and they want to open it up for Q&A. So feel free, you're welcome to add questions in the chat. You have been muted, so you're welcome to also unmute yourself to ask questions. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Rosemary and Gretchen.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to try to maneuver I knew this was going to happen. I have multiple screens and I need to get my mouse over to the screen it needs to be on so that I could share my screen. All right, this is not working so well. Give me just a second. All right, there we go.
Sure, no problem.
And there we go. And you guys will tell me if you can see the slide.
Yes, I can see the slide on my side.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to do most of the talking. Gretchen is going to chime in as needed and as she feels that she wants to. So we have just a few things we're going to present today, some just high level initiatives they're huge, there's probably 30 slides that could go with each one of them, but it's just a synopsis to introduce it, to have discussion, for you to ask questions. And then the one that we kind of blew out a little bit was electronic informed consent and email and that sort of thing, because that seems to be a hot topic. And it's something that we're doing right now as we speak, rolling out a pilot. And there's a lot of activity going on with a lot of you. I see on the session that we've worked with throughout this whole long year of trying to get this going. So I think what Debbie said is this first 2 or 3 slides are just the initiatives. So as I talk about an initiative, I'll just pause and then we'll take questions for that particular initiative. It may be that informed consent may not be new to you. You may have heard it all before, so there might not be a lot of discussion with that, but we just thought that would be a good topic to talk about in a little more detail. So as she said, I'm the Continuous Improvement Manager, and unfortunately for our staff, that means continuous change. And I think I drive them insane some days, but they've been very, very good over this last year and a half of we've just made a lot of change, staff change, a lot of process change, system changes. So we are really, really comfortable with change over in our group. So these are some of the big things that we're working on, and I'll talk about them in just a little bit of detail. So electronic consent, a new SOP format, and some new processes that came from the common rule change and just out of necessity. We are moving our WVU plus KC from the on-premise system to the cloud. Automated forms, replacing some of our old forms with automated workflow and data collection behind the scenes, a data protection initiative, and we launched a new website last August, which hopefully has more guidance than the other one is, maybe a little easier to navigate, but it's based on the university's template. So this is just a little more detail about our core initiatives from last year to this year. So the website, like I said, the university, as you know, moved to an ADA compliant template. We were severely out of compliance because we had a lot of content and specifically Word documents that weren't not ADA compliant and PDFs that weren't ADA compliant. So the layout was completely modified. That took about a year because we have a lot of content. It's not just a, you know, hey, we're advertising ourselves. I mean, ours is really like a encyclopedia for most people. So I just took some, I guess, some ideas from some other schools and other Office of Human Research Protection websites, and we came up with some new guidance layouts, like an A to Z guidance for people who just want to look up a term. And then some, you know, core topic guidance, like informed consent is a core topic. So hopefully people can find things easier. It's all not done yet on the guidance side. We still have some work to do, but there is a lot going on there. So hopefully if you haven't seen it, this link takes you there, but I can send the link to Debbie and she can send it out. You can bookmark it if you don't have it bookmarked already, because a lot of our forms are on there. And if you work with us a lot, you know that we have lots of forms. Informed consent, we will talk more about that, so I'm not going to go on, but let me pause on the website. Is there any comment or question or any suggestions?
I haven't received anything in the chat.
Oh, okay. Hey, Gretchen, can you cut and paste the website link in the chat?
You bet.
Because I'm afraid if I do it, I'm going to mess up my whole screen thing that I have going on.
Not a problem.
So, okay. Let's talk about automated forms next. So when she sends you that link, if you want to, you can look at the forms page, but there are forms that are kind of highlighted in a light yellow, and they're build forms. So the Koali has a product called Build. It is an awesome product. From, you know, the beginning, it's just made a huge difference in how we do our business. So it allowed us to do automated approvals. People don't have to run around and get manual approvals for repositories and information access anymore. It'll just route to the next person. It eventually comes back to us with the right approvals. The data is automatically captured behind the scenes, and we can export it to a spreadsheet if we need to. So a lot of the manual tracking is now eliminated. Things like the protocol close form and the protocol status form are in build right now. They will become part of the Koali system when we go live in the cloud, but we automated them for now so that the information's captured and the researcher just gets back a PDF that they can attach to the protocol. So that's a big improvement for us. We hope it's a big improvement for you all, but there's probably about 8 or 9 forms that were moved to Koali Build. A lot of the other stuff that we have are Word templates, and they have to stay in Word format, as you know, because people have to customize them. We have a new form, actually 2 new forms. We have a Reliance request form. So as part of the new common rule, single IRB and collaborative research was a big part of that. So we were getting lots of requests for Reliance both ways. And so we came up with a form for people to request either for WVU to be the IRB of record or to rely on another IRB. So that form helps the people in our office who process that and work on that to get the right information up front. It eliminates a lot of back and forth. And then we can, you know, make sure we understand exactly what is needed and streamline the process to get things moving along. The electronic submission form, we'll talk about that, but that is not a build form right now. Data protection is another initiative that is a pretty big, and it's still ongoing. We, in our office, we have Joe, who was spending an inordinate amount of time working with people on data agreements behind the scenes. So we got together with OSP, the CTSI, West Kimball, and both ITS groups, and just started talking about how can we make this better. not only for data agreements, but for protocol submissions. So right now we have a couple questions that say, does this protocol need data protection, yes or no? And you answer yes or no, but nothing really happens either way. And we ask, how are you protecting confidential data? And the researcher puts in how they're protecting it. So at one point in time, I think there was some standard language that went in there, but now there's really not a good way for the reviewers to verify that that is in fact the appropriate way to protect the data used for that protocol or that research. So we're working with the IT to come up with a build form where at the beginning of the research project, you just lay out, this is what I'm going to collect, and this is where I'm going to be doing the research, and these are the locations, and just all of the upfront stuff that and then they will classify what they think the data is and tell you, okay, it's got to go here, it's got to be protected this way. And sometimes as you know, there's more money involved. You need to buy something or a product or put it in a cloud vendor that we don't have a relationship with. So it kind of allows people to think a little ahead with those things rather than finding out at the end. This process is not done. It's done from a data agreement perspective, but we haven't rolled it out yet. We're still kind of discussing how to handle the low risk data. So things that IT may not need to look at. If it's not PHI and it's not PII, can we just, how do we get things through? But the IRB knowing that somebody with the appropriate knowledge looked at it. So we're still working through that, but hopefully we'll get something done here in the next couple months and you'll hear more about it. Any questions on that one?
There's nothing in the chat, but once again, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions.
Okay. So we have the new SOPs and the new format. If you look at our website under policies, you'll see a drop down for our standard SOPs. So our current format is more like chapters in a book. They're just sections and there's topics per section. The new format will be kind of breaking those out into about 30 some documents that will provide the research community with an easier way to find how they should do something in research. So instead of having, a document where you read through a couple pages or 3 or 4 pages and you try to find what you need, the SOP will be titled, informed consent, electronic informed consent. Closing out a protocol, flex protocols. So they'll be very, very specific and they'll be listed on the website. The content will be on the website so that you can easily search for it. And then you'll have the option to print the SOP as well if you want to download it and print it. Some of the new ones that we're working on, electronic informed consent, that one's been around. The draft is approved. We just need to take it through the last cycle within our office and get the IO, Dr. King's approval. The data protection one is in progress and it's Reliance on finishing the process. We talked about Reliance. That one is pretty much done. It just needs to be written and then reviewed. The quality improvement program is also in progress, and we are actively working on expanded access, emergency use, compassionate use, and just developing the process. A lot of these, the timing was good on them because we needed to come up with how do we want to do business and what needs to change from the current KC system going into the cloud. So any questions on the SOPs or the new format?
When do you expect, Rosemary, this is Shelley, when do you expect for the SOPs to be out?
Well, they're kind of coming one by one because some of them, the content did not change, just the format. So we're going to try to start to roll some of those out. I don't know, Gretchen, if you want to chime in here and talk about staffing or anything.
Yeah, probably so. It's probably a good place to address that. One of the big challenges that we've had with the SOPs is that they needed to be revised when I first got here. And there was some work on them that our office was trying to do. And at that time we had 3 people. Okay. So as those 3 people are all trying to rewrite the SOPs, here comes the new common rule. The new common rule completely turned everything upside down. So we had to pull together fairly quickly an addendum to get us through those changes, which for those of you that remember this, it was January 2019 when that was officially, that was the drop dead date for the implementation of the new common rule. Then we hired a bunch of new staff. Then we started our new process for moving to the cloud, which in the process of moving to the cloud, what we discovered was that there are going to be aspects of the new system, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this, but the bottom line is aspects of the new system that the old system did that the new system won't do. Okay. So we're having to look at the SOPs and ask the question if we need to rewrite SOPs for certain sections so that we can still be compliant, because the previous way that we were doing things won't work with the new system. And then COVID hit. So we pretty much, this thing just went down the toilet. I mean, it did. It just sort of got sucked down the drain. And we are very hopeful that by next spring, we're going to have fully fleshed out, completely completed, new, brand spanking new SOPs, recognizing that there's an ongoing need to develop and to continue to, develop. Data protection, which Rosemary talked about, that was something that was started a year ago. That's brand new. So we have to write to that. Electronic informed consent, that's brand new. So we have to write to that. And one of the challenges, and she'll talk about this a little bit in just a bit with electronic informed consent, is that it's really a pilot. And we know that it's not the best of all worlds, but it's the best of the world that we have to live in right now. So it's kind of one of those situations where we have to deal with it and we have to live with it and definitely make the best of it. So we've got a lot of stuff. Expanded access. I need to rewrite the section for expanded access, because previously I think we had emergency use once a year, maybe. And then all of a sudden, poof, now we have emergency use once a month that we're having to deal with. And that's a bit of an exaggeration, but still it's significantly more than it has been in the past. And so we started looking at the processes and realizing this is just not enough. It doesn't go enough in detail. It isn't explicit enough for the researchers or the reviewers or the IRB office, because the questions would come up, well, what do we do with this? And we'd go, great question. We're going to have to make it up on the fly. So we're trying to flesh those out. So that's a long answer to your question, but I'm hoping by spring. But as Rosemary said, as we get them done, we're rolling them out. We're not waiting for, one big mammoth reveal, because if we do that, it's going to be 2025 before we get these things out, because there's always going to be something new that has to be changed.
Yeah. And a lot of them are, we're looking, the OHRP accreditation plays in this because they have requirements that are above and beyond the regulations. So, we did the gap analysis. I did that like a year and a half ago of what was missing. And that's why we have, we'll end up with 30 or 40 documents, because even if they're not real big, we have to address things from a topic perspective for OHRP.
Yeah.
And our existing ones, they're not really written to be procedures. They're really written to explain and describe. So the new ones will be more of a SOP format, but they'll have a high level procedure in there. And then our guidance, whether it's on the website or a document, will flow into that. And if there's forms, so we want to kind of have a whole set of materials that go with the SOP and roll it all out. And I think, we're on our way to getting there. It's a lot of work, and we just don't have, it's basically me and then begging when everybody else has free time to look and review and help with grammar checking and things like that. So,
Totally understand.
yeah. But the TAC committee has been awesome in reviewing ones that are appropriate there. So we're trying to get as many eyes on them as possible. Gretchen has just created a faculty advisory committee. They'll look at some of them. Through the Koali and the Cloud project, we created a submitter and advisory committee, and we hope to use them as well to look at some of this. So if any of you out there want to be on any of our committees, we're kind of going to treat it like a little governance kind of structure for us to get things vetted and make sure that we're considering all avenues when we put something out. So contact Gretchen if you're interested in helping out.
Yeah, and just to add to that a little bit, we're serious about that. I mean, one of the things about process improvement and continuous improvement is we need frontline input. We need input from people that are dealing with us on the front line every day. And oftentimes what happens is procedures and initiatives are developed in a vacuum. They're developed very quickly because people have to get something out. And I will admit we are faced with the same issues at times where we have to just cobble something together and just get it out there in order to try and ensure that we maintain compliance. But even with the new system and situations like this, we want more input. And so the whole idea of putting together an advisory group, and I commend Rosemary because she was the one that came up with this idea. So I'm giving her kudos on this one. The idea of pulling together these advisory groups will help. So if you want to participate, the faculty advisory group is made up exclusively of faculty, but we also have other advisory groups. You do not have to be faculty. You can be a research coordinator. You can just be staff in the office. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be happy to add you.
Absolutely.
Hi, this is Tanya. I have another question related to the SOPs. So you mentioned that some of them are format changes only and some of them are process changes. So will there be a way for the important information about process changes to be communicated to the research community?
I think that the only thing that we're going to be able to do is when we release these new ones, if there are process changes, just release something through WVUKC listserv that says this is new. And I get where you're going with that, Tanya. Go in and review this. This is the new process. These are the new changes. I would like to say that it's easy. To say this is exactly what the new changes are going to be. I am going to say that we are hopeful, and this is all I'm going to say about it. We're hopeful that we're going to be able to get some assistance with our SOPs later this year, and that this individual would be able to focus on that exclusively. So we might be able to do a better job of saying, here are some of the changes. So I get what you're saying with that one, because I know that complicates things when new things come out and you don't have any idea what's changed.
Thanks, Gretchen.
And I can say just from the one who's immersed in it, and not a lot of things like, the big things you see up there on the screen are really what changed. There might be a few other things, but most of them aren't, like I said, they're not process oriented anyway, the way they're written. The procedure will just pull from what we're doing. It's what people are doing today. We're just going to document at a high level, use the Casey system to submit your flex protocol, things like that. So I don't think it's going to be a huge hit. They're just going to look different, and they will have procedures in them that weren't there before, but it will largely be what people are doing. and that are in our guidance documents. So we're kind of taking what's in the guidance and taking some process steps and putting them in the SOPs, and then referring within the SOP to the guidance or the form or whatever is used to carry out the procedure. Okay, anything else on the SOP? So the Koali in the Cloud protocol has been an interesting project, complex, a lot more than I think what any of us thought who are involved in it. It's definitely brand new technology. I think we're 10 years behind in the technology with what our IT people have told us with the on-premise system. It's really hard to get data out. It's really hard to it's just basically a clunky system right now. Although it, you know, when we look at it compared to the new system and we look at the tab system and how it works well now, I think. But there's a lot of things from you know, trying to get data and reporting and integration perspective that just don't work and will never work. And we just have to move. So with that, you get, you know, all this, the data will be in the cloud, managed and secured by Koali. And so it's not like it's just going to be swirling around in the cloud out there with anybody being able to access it. It's a brand new interface. It will just look totally different. And for some people they will never get used to it. Some people will be like, this is awesome. It's just what you're used to and what you like to look at. But it's more in line with what you're used to seeing in software today. We're using a screening questionnaire to determine protocol and review type. So instead of asking researchers to put in what they think their protocol type is, I mean, sometimes it's very clear, sometimes it isn't. They will answer, I think it's about 20 questions, 18, I can't remember. And the system will determine what path they need to go down. And it will populate on the left-hand side, all the things they need to fill out. And they'll have checkbox marks as they complete each one. So it's kind of intuitive as to where you're at and what's left and to do and that sort of thing. So it's really nice and up to date. Now, that said, there's, you know, we are living and using a very highly customized version of the software. We're going from that to what they kind of refer to as out of the box. And it was built for, you know, schools that do probably, I don't know, a moderate level of protocol submissions and not complex ones. So a lot of what we need wasn't built yet. So they're building some of that for us. Some of it will be built later. So when Gretchen says there's some things that we have to do workarounds for and revamp process, it's because of that. But the core protocol submission piece of it, and I don't know, whoever's on the call from our staff can chime in, works well. And I think it's pretty good. We're getting into things with the committee meetings and reviewer capability. That's when we get into some capability that isn't there. So we were supposed to go live. We were planning maybe a couple tentative dates. We're now looking at probably, I would say, next spring, Gretchen, 2022 spring, because we have to pick beginning or end of semester. We can't go live in the middle of a semester. And there will be some freeze time for data conversion. So we have to consider a lot of things because of that, and timing is one of them. And so it will most likely end up being the end of the spring semester of 2022. Okay. Questions, comments about that? And that's another one, like Gretchen said, with the submission and the submitter and reviewer group, where we have people do tests. We just send out a script. I have a web page, and they click on the web page and they run through the script and test for us. And it's worked pretty well. And then sometimes I'll have meetings with them and we'll talk about their feedback. We haven't done it a lot recently, but we did it a lot in the summer and fall. And I thought for us, it was very, very helpful to have that kind of feedback. So if you are interested, please let us know. All right, so let's get on with the fun stuff. So we're going to talk, unless somebody wants to talk more about one of the other things, we're going to talk more about electronic informed consent. with a heavy emphasis on email and secure email and why we can't use email and what secure email is. So our electronic informed consent, of course, only applies to protocols reviewed by the WVU IRBs. If a central IRB has its own electronic informed consent process or product or whatever, this does not apply to that. We have asked legal about adding language into our master agreements and, to make sure we're covered as an institution for anything that could happen from a risk, security, or data breach perspective and informed consent. And we're actively working through that right now. We took a risk-based approach to informed consent. So more than minimal risk and only minimal risk, and PHI or PII. Those are the categories that have to have a signature for informed consent. We had to use existing products. This initial phase was not about bringing in a new product. It was about using Redcap and Qualtrics to try to get something going. It just took longer than we thought because there were a lot of decisions that had to be made. And there wasn't a lot of help for creating templates and documentation and that sort of thing. It covers in-person or remote consent. A lot of people ask why do you want to use electronic materials for in-person consent? And as some of you know, it just helps with tracking, compliance. You don't have to have paper anymore. Everything's in one place. So if you're using remote consent and then you have some in-person people, you're not managing both paper and electronic consent. All through this whole entire thing, we have tried to balance policy, regulatory policy, federal policy, state laws, and our institutional information security policies. So information security and data security was a huge piece of it. It was probably less than the federal policies. So as you can see, I have my little icons here. People can sign with a stylus. If they have a touch screen, they can sign with their finger. If they have a touch screen, they can sign with a mouse. They're ADA compliant, and you can do it on a phone, a computer, any type of mobile device that you have. Redcap and Qualtrics will work with most devices. Current state, you either have to print copies, you have to obtain addresses, you have to prepare FedEx or postal mail envelopes, then you have to wait for the informed consent to arrive, discuss it with the participant or the legally authorized representative, then they have to return it, you have to manage the paper, they have to scan it. Maybe people are doing email, but they shouldn't be. So whatever's happening or was happening didn't really have a whole lot of guidance or policy around it. So as we move into this pilot, we do have policy. We are now more aware of the risks and what we should and shouldn't do. So in the pilot phase, we'll be obtaining email addresses. We'll be uploading the informed consent document, whether that's your form or an informational document. We'll be scheduling sessions. Both parties will receive the signed document immediately. There's no paper, they'll be version controlled. There's a record of the signatures or acceptance of participation. And that can be done in a day. Whereas before, it's 3 to however many days you're waiting on people to do things or the FedEx to come or the mail to come. Any questions there? So as I said, we took a risk-based approach. So, and I don't think it's any news for this group that more than minimal risk requires a signature. And we have a lot of research that comes in that's only minimal risk that doesn't have PHI or PII. They do not need a signature, and there's way less that they have to do for consent. For more than minimal risk, you have to get permission to use email using the form that we have created, and it's an e-template, and it has to be sent out before. It can be sent out right before, it's sent out months before, however people choose to do it. And what that does is it allows the person to understand what the risks are related to email, provide an and I think I have a slide on this, provide a preferred email address and verify that address and then move on to the consent process. So I have a slide, so we'll talk about that in a little more detail. For more than minimal risk, you have to use Redcap and you have to use HSC if you're doing Zoom video sessions. You cannot use the WVU Zoom because it isn't HIPAA compliant. You have to verify identity of the person signing the form, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And you have to provide the fully executed copy, and only Redcap can do that. For only minimal risk, you can use HSC Qualtrics, but you cannot use WVU Qualtrics because it is not HIPAA compliant or sensitive data compliant. And when there's no signature required, you can use either version of Qualtrics. You can use Redcap. All the e-templates go back and forth to both products. A lot of people with OMR use MTurk. There's 2 standard questions they have to include. We give them the text on the website. And if they want to do a video conference, which most of this doesn't need or require, but if they want to, they can use either one they want. Any questions on this slide? So the e-templates.
Can I just ask a quick question on that, Rosemary?
Sure, go ahead.
This is Dan Lucas. Are you guys doing the signatures like on an iPad within the context of the patient exam room, or is there a click or a stylus? I mean, how are you guys doing that at the encounter?
The Redcap template will allow, depending on what device the person's using, they could use a stylus or their finger. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your coordinators have iPads that are going into the room and then signing with a stylus. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not like a click and point type of a thing. They're signing it.
Yes, it's an electronic signature. And for Redcap, we have, as Tanya and Shelley know, and we're not done yet, we have gone through exhaustive measures to make sure that it's compliant with FDA, which means that to me, it's gone through the highest level of scrutiny that it can, and it meets the state laws in West Virginia for electronic signatures. So there's a lot of things Redcap does behind the scenes that Qualtrics does not do in capturing metadata for electronic signatures. So yeah, they definitely sign it and it's legal. Go ahead.
Are you printing out and sharing with the subject then the copy of the consent? How are you satisfying that part of it?
They immediately get, as soon as they submit the form, they immediately get a email with a copy of their responses. So in Redcap, they'll get a PDF that includes the images of the informed consent form and all of their responses in Redcap, because it's like a survey. So they'll get all their survey responses, which in this case is their name and that, yes, I agree to participate, and that shows them their signature, their electronic signature. And they can download that. Or they can print it later. And if they want to print a copy, I'm not sure how this would work in the clinical setting, but I'm sure that if they had a printer, somebody could provide them with a printed copy if they wanted one then and there. But that's how they're getting their copy, their immediate copy with their signature.
This is great. And you guys are doing this 100% with all of your investigator initiated as well as contract and NCI studies, the whole bit you're doing like this?
I can't answer that one.
Hey, Dan, this is Shelley.
Hi, Shelley.
I would say we in CTSI have focused on trials with COVID for this process. So
Okay.
it could be investigator initiated, or it could be industry NIH funded as well.
I love it. I wish we could we've talked about it here, but we've not embarked on anything like you guys. You guys are way ahead of us on this. Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt. You guys go ahead with your presentation. Thank you.
Oh, no, we're happy you're happy. I mean,
yeah.
If there's anything I can do to help, Dan, just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Where are you, Dan?
I'm down at CAMC.
Okay. And so then just continuing on with that, the consenting researcher gets upon return of the submitted form, however the notifications are set up by the research team, the consenting person goes in, provides their signature and the date, and then it's considered fully executed. And at that point, Redcap has a send it feature, which allows for the secure transmission. What it is basically the participant gets a link and says this link is live for, I forget, I think we said 14 or 30 days, I can't remember. And they can click on the link and then they'll get the fully executed copy with the consenting person's signature and their signature. But they immediately get their copy, which is, I think, the most important part of being able to provide something electronically. Okay, I've lost my mouse again. Here we go. All right, so e-templates, you know, I came up with this idea because obviously you're going to need some standard, just like we have the informed consent template that has the standard language and the optional language and all that fun stuff. I know those are really fun to work with, but the e-templates are the same premise. It's just that they are designed to use within Redcap and for Qualtrics. So it's just, these are the standard things that the IRB wants us to ask when we take the process from paper to electronic. You know, obviously we need their name, we need to take some things from that existing form and put them into the e-template. And there's some other things we need to do that we didn't have to do in the e-template. So that's why there are e-templates. They have common naming, OHRP E01, E07, so between Qualtrics and Redcap, so that people don't get confused. Redcap will have more e-templates because there's, you know, the standalone HIPAA authorization form is in there, the assent form is in there. With Qualtrics, it's less for research that requires a signature than Redcap is, so there's not as many for Qualtrics. In Redcap, they're in the library. When you create a new project, you're asked, do you want to create it from a template in the library? And you go right down to the library and they're right there. In Qualtrics, they're on our website and they have to be downloaded and then uploaded into Qualtrics. So there's an extra step there. So when you're working with them, the only thing I think, what I would say is that there are, what you get when you immediately open it up is the standard. You can't change it. You can't delete questions. You can't change the text. Now you can, you definitely can delete things and change things, but physically you can if you want to. But when you submit that to the IRB, they're probably not going to approve it. So if you end up saying, oh, I don't want the person's name in there, then you have to tell the IRB why you took the name question out. If you add a question, you may, I think, you know, most of the time people are going to want to add stuff. I need to add this question. I need to add that question. So when you submit it to the IRB and they look at it through the link, you just have to put in your submission. This is why I added these questions to the template. They're set with our WVU OHRP logo. That can't be changed. If it has to be changed for some reason, again, just submit and justify what you're doing and it will get reviewed. But the standard ones have our template. They've got all of the federal requirements for the back button, the forward button, the save and continue, ADA compliance is addressed. So a lot of that stuff is already taken care of in the template. So that's why we wanted to be able to provide the e-template rather than having people just create whatever and put whatever background and logo they want and that sort of thing. But again, if anything needs to be changed, you just need to explain it when you submit your protocol. You will have to submit the link to the e-template and you will have to export it to a file. And both products have the capability with Redcap, it's just a little PDF icon. You click on it, you get the PDF, and then you attach it to the protocol submission. And that is a federal requirement. The IRB has to have both the link and a hard copy of what was submitted. Now, when you do this the first time, when you're doing the draft, there's a placeholder document in the e-template. You do not have to upload the draft of your informed consent document when it's being reviewed. You do not have to do that until after both things are approved. There's just a lot of, I think, things that can go wrong with doing the draft document and then turning around and doing it again, not to mention it's time consuming when you get the approved informed consent document. Okay. All right, and I talked about these other things. So we have a lot of information on this on our website. The guidance consent page has a ton of information, probably more than you even want to know. So then with with all of this, we had to have additional requirements for submission, and it's called an EIC worksheet. And why do you need it? One is because we cannot add to the existing KC system because we're in the middle of moving away from it. Anything that we do will mess with data migration since it's already started. So we modified the questions, the existing questions a little bit to add some, references to electronic consent and to not forget to do the EIC worksheet. The other big thing is people who are reviewing the protocols, they just will have no idea what your intentions are if you don't tell them. We just had a conversation with someone yesterday who was using some electronic components and started like 2 years ago before we even did anything. So all we really needed to know was, how are you getting this information to the person? And we went round and round. Finally, we met with her and she told us, and we were like, oh, okay. So it's just that, tell the reviewer what you're going to be doing from the beginning to the end. How are you getting the information? How are you to the participant or the LAR? How are you explaining it to them? What products are you using? The worksheet it just walks you right through that. It gives you sample answers of what we're looking for. So while it's an extra step, we've tried to make it as easy as possible for you to fill it out. It will save you time because the reviewers aren't going to be coming back and saying, well, what are you using email? How are you sending this? Are you going to do a Zoom session to explain it? Or are you going to call them? So things like that will definitely save time. And then when we go to the cloud with WVKC, a subset of the questions, not every question, but those questions will be integrated into the questionnaire. So it's not forever, it's for the remainder of this year. And as you all get used to it, it's not going to be so hard, but in the beginning, it's definitely can be overwhelming. I understand that. Any questions about that? And we did 3 worksheets. There's one for more than minimal risk. It's got, I think, 9 or 10 questions. There's one for only minimal risk with PHI, and then there's an only minimal risk one. So you don't really have to, if you're only minimal risk, you don't have to labor through the more than minimal risk questions.
Hey, Rosemary, this is Ann Schnatterly at the Cancer Institute. Hi, I have a question. So if we are using another IRB as the IRB of record, but we want to use electronic consents, do we need to have this set up to submit to you when we're doing like the local review? Is there something that how do we communicate that, or can we use this project with external IRBs?
I will have to defer to Gretchen on that one.
So actually, Anne, we talked about that. Rosemary and I talked about that yesterday because when we were talking, she said, are there any questions you think are going to come up? And I said, yep, it's going to be about central IRB use and whether or not they have to implement this. We're currently in the process of working with legal to try and determine what level, how do I put this? To determine what's acceptable, okay? In the interim, what I will tell you is this. For those projects that are being overseen by a central IRB, those projects are being overseen by a central IRB. WVU basically has said we're waiving oversight authorization to a central IRB. And if we try to get too involved in, how do I say this? Just say it. If we get too involved in how the central IRB is overseeing this study, then we might as well be overseeing the study ourselves, okay? Which defeats the purpose of even using a central IRB. So for the time being, I would say that if it is something that you have questions about and you want to reach out to our office, specifically, I would recommend Rosemary because all of this is good input because once again, this EIC process for right now, we're piloting it. So we know that there are going to be some changes in the future. I would encourage you to do that. But I would say don't get too hung up on it. If you're using a central IRB, just use it. Just get it
Um,
done. Just get it done. So,
And this is Shelley. I think we have that situation in CTSI where we have provided the central IRB what we're using, and what we were using and we continue to use is Redcap, and they approve us using Redcap. So that's how we have approached it.
Yeah, that's what we did for the COVID one that we're piloting as
Yeah.
well. I didn't know if we needed to have that set up and send it just so the local, when we do our local IRB submission for the, registration.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Mhm.
Okay, we didn't do that. So if we need to, then we need to know that.
Well, Gretchen, we'll have to talk about that, whether we want that with the submission, but I think you're right, though. I think that, to me, the issue is really that then we become are we liable for the consent process that they approved, and it's our consent process. So it's just, I don't know what the
well,
issue
and
is there.
ultimately we are. I mean, even if we turn over, that has been one of the big arguments over the last decade in talking about central IRB use. The IRBs have the right to oversee the study, but at the end of the day, if there's an issue with the study, then the institution has liability associated with that, and it's directly related to the institution. It doesn't necessarily fall back on the IRB. So Rosemary's right, and that's one of the reasons why we are conferring with legal on it, to try and see where these things fit together. And that's one of the reasons why, even try to backtrack in here just a little, that's one of the reasons why the last couple of years for everybody in research have been so difficult, because we've had so many things that have hit us within a fairly short period of time that had to do with technology changes, regulatory changes, COVID, and things that were pushed forward, need for new SOPs. And so I just want to say to everyone out there that is working in research right now and trying to keep your studies going and flowing, thank you so much for your patience as we try to work through some of this stuff, because all I can do is promise you that our intentions are to try and come up with processes and ways of doing this that are as easy as possible. But we're hamstrung sometimes by the existing technology that we're having to work with. The fact that we've got basically 3 separate groups: WVU Medicine, HSC, and also WVU. And each group has its own set of institutional policies that they operate by. And it can make it really, really convoluted and complicated. But thank you. Thank you very much. And as I've said to people before on talks like this, if you have specific issues that you feel like are not being addressed, that relate to the entire research community, maybe not just specifically an issue that you might have with, with a particular study, please come and talk to us, because we need to hear about these things, because we can't fix it if we don't know about it. And the other thing is, sometimes we're not going to be able to fix it, but we certainly can't fix it if we're not aware of it. So just thank you again. We really do appreciate it.
Debbie, are we done at 1 o'clock?
We are, but I
Okay.
mean, yeah. But if
So-
you have more, go right ahead. Yeah.
I'll go through quickly, and if people have to drop off, they could drop off. But we just wanted to spend a minute to talk about why email isn't a good idea. Email attachments, well, the university doesn't permit it, but I just wanted to say, that this is why. We've got this message here. You see, it's got a pretty descriptive subject line. The text is descriptive. There's an attachment, and all of this goes clear text if you have no encryption. And the attachment along the way gets stored in the person who sent its email folder, the participants' email folder, any of the providers that provide the email service, it gets stored in their servers. So that attachment just kind of leaves a little bit of, breadcrumbs along the way as it makes its way back and forth. And that's primarily why it's just not a good idea. And along with the descriptive subject lines and the text, if somebody is an unintended recipient, they can read it. The risk is to one person, so it's not a huge risk, but it depends on, the person and the situation. So there are things we can do to secure it. They're just not good. They're not automatic. We can't always make sure people are going to remember to do them. So that's why it's just not permitted with the big red X.
By the way, I need to say something real quick. Rosemary, flip back to that if you can. And that was not picking on the cancer. That was not picking on you.
I was just trying to I tried to put something up there that was related to this group. So that's
that was not picking on the cancer.
And this is, I will say, this is a topic I think that we could spend another hour on.
That could have been anything.
Yeah, I noticed your heading though keeps saying unsecure email transmission. So, I think that's that whole, when we talk about secure emails, are you getting to that? Or is that still? Okay.
I don't know that I go through it in detail, but we can definitely talk about it, and I can send you the webpage with it because we have instructions for how to do secure email.
Okay.
But so and this is all related to informed consent. Of course, when we do permission to use email for informed consent, it's only for informed consent. It's not for anything else related to the research study. So it doesn't give people the green light to go and discuss medical issues in email. Of course, people are going to know that, but some people may not know that. So it's only for transmitting informed consent documentation, and that's it. So we've used this slide quite a bit over the past months to talk about the certain stages of the informed consent form. I'll go through it quickly. The first stage is if you want to send an unsigned form to a participant for information. Hey, we're going to do this. If you're interested, going to email you this form. Well, the university doesn't like that, but it's confidential at this point. It's not sensitive, so you could do it. But what could happen? The person will want to maybe sign it and then send it back to you. And that's, if they choose to do it, it's okay. But from what we have seen in research, HIPAA says you have to educate them on the risks related to email. If they choose to email it back, then they chose to do it. But once they email it back, now it's in the researcher's email folder. And when it's signed, we must protect it under federal regulations for electronic informed consent. At that point, we have to protect it. So it's sitting in an unencrypted email folder. It's got to be deleted, and then it's got to be copied immediately to an encrypted location. And then the fully executed copy is definitely sensitive PII. At that point, we cannot send that back through email, unsecured email at all. So why would Redcap can do all of this for you. It can send out we have a template. If you want to send an unsigned one out for information and put one question in it, the template has one question that says, are you interested in participation? Yes or no. It will come back. You'll have all of that logged. And then you have your participant, you've got an email, you've got, your participation list. When you're ready to actually consent them, you move on to sending them the consent document, and then you move on to sending them the fully executed one. So Redcap can do every step securely for you without sending email attachments. I went through all of this just now, so sorry. I'm not going to bore you with that. So secure email. I don't know that I actually give you I don't give you the actual. It's on the website, but in a nutshell, it's using a nondescript subject line, but people could forget to do that inadvertently. There's no way for anyone to audit that, or, the email system doesn't catch it if it's nondescript. There still could be an unintended recipient. When you do the secure email, the the subject line is not encrypted. So that's why we're saying you have to use a nondescript subject line. You put the word secure in brackets in the subject line. That supposedly encrypts it. Some of the IT people tell me it doesn't work 100% of the time. And then what happens is the recipient, depending on what email system they're using, they could get different instructions on how to access the message, unencrypt it, and then access the consent form. So there's not really a lot of control over that. You're kind of leaving it up to them to how to figure out how to get the consent form. And then they have to send it back in email anyway, and who knows what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. They're not going to secure it probably. And then, like I said, when it comes back, it's in the researcher's email folder, and then they've got to immediately delete it and put it in an encrypted location or as soon as possible. So Redcap and Qualtrics both, I'm going to leave Qualtrics out of the equation for right now because it can do some of this, but Redcap can do all of it. And you do not have to worry about remembering how to do secure email or how the participant's going to end up with it. You may, it may be very easy for you. You may have used this over time and it works for you, and you've got a 4 or 5 people that you're dealing with in your study, and it may work. You need to get, moving forward, you will need to get permission to do it. So the IRB will have to approve using secure email. Any questions, comments on that? And again, permission to use email in a nutshell is an institutional requirement to reduce the liability and educate the participants, LARs, of the risks associated with emailing informed consent information. So as long as they, it kind of covers us, because let's remember Redcap and Qualtrics both use the email system to send the links. However, we're not attaching the document, and it's a nondescript subject line that's already built into both products. So it's already done for you. So that significantly reduces the risk, but it is still email. So we must still get permission to send those links out. Right, using my mouse again. And I think there is some support available. Redcap has a lot more support than Qualtrics. Qualtrics has no institutional support for this, for electronic informed consent. You can call the help desks if you need basic help in using Qualtrics and uploading. There's a little more steps involved, but Redcap is much easier and there is more institutional support. And just a quick staff update. We added Justine just recently as a triage tier 1 support person. We added Jane December 2020. She was one of our board members who came on to replace Lilo, who left in December. Jane is a huge knowledge base and has been doing expedited reviews. We still have Melissa, Joe, and Val, and Mary all on staff. And as you all may know, Sarah Stutler left us in June to join another group within HSC. And that's it. So I know we rushed through the email thing quickly, and I know people may have questions or feedback, and I am definitely open and want to hear it. So please email me and we can have a discussion or whatever you like.
And also, Rosemary, I know you mentioned about you have instructions for how to send things securely through email. Is that something you can provide to me and I can send to all the attendees today as well?
Yes, it's on on our website under, I think you will see under guidance.
Okay.
I think there is a guidance topic called sending secure email, but I can send you the exact link.